actually. Okay, this is one thing. What next thing is happening? The tissue of the uterus is now becoming sensitive, and oxytocin is now making arrangements. If the receptors of oxytocin are increasing, and now if the amount of oxytocin increases more and more, then this combination can cause contractions or initiate the contractions. Okay, even though progesterone is موجود and it is trying to control the situation, but one time will come when oxytocin will be released at the end and receptors are موجود in kathir number, and even at that time progesterone cannot do anything and it will overwhelm, because now oxytocin will be supported by estrogen and some other hormones of the uterus, prostaglandins. They work together and they can initiate the contractions. All right. So oxytocin will increase the contractions in the last part of the pregnancy, okay, and that is a direct effect as well as an indirect effect in promoting prostaglandins also. So oxytocin is doing a direct job, and oxytocin is taking the help of the prostaglandins, that you also come. Okay, come on, I'm helping you, I'm giving you more receptor, you come and join me and we'll work together and we'll produce better contractions. Okay. Prostaglandins, they are very, very important, as I was telling you, in the initiation, both initiation to start and to progress the labor. Okay, to carry on the process of the labor, you need a good amount of prostaglandins. Okay, and if the labor is weak, we can now use oxytocin, okay, and we can now locally use prostaglandins. Okay, these two are used very frequently and very successfully, please. Okay, all right. Both oxytocin and prostaglandins, they will stimulate their receptors and they will increase the gap junctions. Okay, look at this diagram. Okay, this diagram is actually telling you a comparison, a relationship of the fetus, the placenta, okay, and the mother. You can see three levels. Placenta is موجود between fetus and the mother, isn't it? Look, fetus has his own system, endocrine system, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal gland. It is there in the fetus, which is very active. Okay, it's a full-term fetus, taqriban. Okay, fetus is grown up, and functional adrenal gland is موجود. Okay, placenta is there. Placenta is the place, it's the lab where chemical reactions are going on, and finally the results are sent to the mother. Okay, so three levels are there: fetus, placenta, and mother. Now you see, from the fetus, through a special sequence, what are you getting? You are getting some androgens, okay, DHEAs, androgens, and you are getting cortisol, steroids. These steroids are going into the placenta, and these steroids will do something. They are converted into the estrogens by the aromatase, you know that? Okay, and secondly, they can stimulate the formation of the prostaglandins also. So if they are doing this job, finally the mother will get some estrogens and prostaglandins, and these two are now required actually to facilitate the process of the labor or the delivery, parturition. Okay, all right. So this is the diagram. You start from here. Placenta is the help, you are helping, you are making all these things in the placenta, and finally you are sending it to the mother, and you are making the mother's uterus more sensitive and contractile. Okay? All right. We'll see. The uterus is a very special tissue. As you stretch the smooth muscles, they will show a contraction, reflex contraction of it. Okay? And this process finally culminates in the delivery of the baby. We'll see that. Okay? The contractility is increased by the fetal movements. You know, the fetus is moving. Now the parts of the fetus is moving. Okay, sometimes stretching, sometimes folding itself and changing the position, and that is causing a pressure on one part of the uterus. That part could stretch really because of the change of position, and stretching will lead to reflex contraction of that area. Uterus is now already sensitive, and if you stimulate a sensitive uterus by stretching, what will happen? It can initiate contractions. This is one thing. Second thing is, if the size of the baby is very big, what is the chance? More stretching or less stretching? Okay, so contractions will be initiated easily. Okay, if you have got two babies inside, not wahed, two babies majood, so what happens? Definitely, it's a mechanical area. Okay, mechanical stretch. If you have a bigger baby or you have got two babies, definitely the size and the stretch will be more. Okay. Uterus has a cavity, but the lower part is the narrow part really. Okay, it's the narrow part which is present there, down. If the narrow part is there, it is what? Yeah, cervix. The baby has to pass down through the cervix actually, which is narrow part. The lower uterine segment will be made, and cervix is a very narrow area. Cervix is a thick muscular area which is closed normally in the pregnancy, and it's very difficult. How will the baby pass through that little area? The size of the head of the baby is this much and the size of the cervix is really this much, so little really. How is it manageable to allow this one? Okay, it means you have to bring lots of changes in the cervix area really. We'll see those changes. Cervix is a very sensitive part. Lots of nerve fibers are present and the sensitivity is very high. The message will go from the stretch. You know, when you are stretching the uterus, what are you doing? You are stretching the smooth muscle and you are sending the message of stretch by the nerves to the hypothalamus and pituitary, and then that message will cause more release of which hormone? Oxytocin. Okay, not only you are stretching the muscles mechanically, but you are also stimulating the nerves which are majood in the uterus, and those message from the nerves, sensory nerves, will go to the brain, and via brain, hypothalamus, which is a part, to the pituitary, and the release of the oxytocin. Okay, fetal head is causing and stretching the cervical area or the lower uterine area. Okay, and that area is more sensitive than the upper area because that area is narrow. It has more nerve fibers and it will be stretched more by the head. Every time when you contract the uterus, what will happen to the baby if the head of the baby is down? Will the head move up or down? What do you think? Slightly down. If it moves down, will it stretch the lower part more or less? Oh, so it's a positive feedback that will go. Okay, remember, that will be a positive feedback which will carry on. Oh, yes, that's a very, very interesting and an important point coming up here now. Okay, Shabab. Uterus as a muscle. Uterus experiences the pregnancy, the whole duration of the pregnancy, from conception up to the end of the pregnancy, and then it has to pass through a very difficult phase of delivery of the baby, a very big challenge really, which has to be taken successfully, and after that it has to do a very special job of like preparing itself to become normal. And after delivery of the baby, the uterus has to deliver the placenta also, okay, because it cannot keep the placenta inside. Remember, if you leave a tiny piece of placenta or a clot of blood or any other thing inside any part of the membrane or any part of the placenta or anything which is foreign, which is not for the uterus, uterus will not come back to its original position and the bleeding will continue. This bleeding is called postpartum hemorrhage. Badal Vilada, the bleeding will continue, and that can cause circulatory shock and death of the baby, or death of the mother. I'm sorry, not the baby, baby is gone. The mother, okay? So, imagine, uterus has to contract to remove the placenta, and after removing the placenta, it has to close the blood vessels so that the bleeding should stop, and after that, in coming weeks after delivery of the baby, the uterus has to go back to its original time and position in 4 or 5 weeks, it has to involute, or it has to become smaller in size, because there was hypertrophy and hyperplasia of the uterus. Now baby is gone, alhamdulillah. Okay, uterus has to get back to normal taqriban. It will take time, but slowly and gradually the uterus is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. So it is done by the smooth muscles actually, isn't it? It's changing smooth muscles of the uterus. All these are the functions of uterus during the whole process, from the pregnancy to the finally the postpartum period. Yani takriban 1.5 to 2 months after vilada, the uterus has to make adjustments. Look at the job of the uterus, how much it has to do, isn't it? Now let us divide the activity of the uterus, or the activity of the myometrium, into phases, and let us study the phases. One phase is called phase 0, when the uterus is silent and it is relaxing and the baby is growing inside the mother. Okay, this is called quiescent uterus. Quiescent means silent, inactive, relaxed. Okay, this is phase 0. It means most of the time of pregnancy. Is it phase 0? Yes or no? Oh yes. Most of the time of the pregnancy, first trimester, second trimester, and much part of the third trimester also, it has to be phase 0, isn't it? Phase 1. Last month, few weeks before vilada, few weeks before, now the sequence is changing. Estrogen is increasing and progesterone is like stable or not really going high. So ratio is changing, excitability is changing, and now the uterus is waking up. It was sleeping and now it's waking up, not doing any special job, but waking up from the situation. And after some time it will start the job actually. Okay, so this waking of the uterus muscles is called activation phase. Okay, and that activation happens in the last month actually of the pregnancy. That phase goes on, and after that, after passing some time in activation, then a process of parturition, a true process of parturition, in a contraction or the labor pains will start in the last week of the pregnancy actually. Okay, what will happen? The labor pains will start, and that is the onset or initiation of the parturition. So you will have the phase of stimulation. Stimulation means now you have real contractions of the uterus. These contractions will now increase and increase and increase and increase, and becoming more powerful, and that will cause the changes in the uterus, opening of the cervix, pushing of the baby, delivery of the baby, delivery of the placenta. Everything will happen during the phase of stimulation. So in stimulation, you are doing a complete job. What are you doing? From the beginning of the parturition to the delivery of the placenta, all the stages of labor, stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3, all stages will happen completely during this stimulation phase. Okay, all right. And before stimulation, uterus is prepared and it is now active. Okay, all preparation has been done. Activation last few weeks of the pregnancy, and before that phase 0 is maujud. Okay, last part is Badal Vilada, after the delivery of the baby, still uterus has to do a job, I told you. Okay, it has to reduce its size, coming back to normal, giving response to the hormones, and preparing itself for the next ovarian and menstrual cycles, isn't it? Because after 6 weeks or 8 weeks, again menstrual cycles usually have to start. Sometimes 2 months, sometimes 3 months. After that, what happens? Again, it will start. So during the phase of lactation, when the mother is nursing the baby, the uterus is preparing itself. The size is reducing. This process of reduction is called involution. Okay, involution of the uterus, coming back to its normal original size by reducing itself. Okay, so are you familiar with the phases now? If I say phase 0, what do you mean by that? Relaxation phase, and it's the most tawil phase actually. It's covering almost all the time of the pregnancy except for the last month of the pregnancy or so, isn't it? Then in the last month of pregnancy, variably you will have first the activation phase, and then you will have the stimulation, and then there is a process of labor completely, and after that delivery is done. Still you have about 4, 5 or 6 weeks, and that is the last phase of the uterine activity, where uterus is coming back to its normal or original. Okay? No confusion about the phases? Great, thank you. Look at the graph. Look at the phases very quickly, because we are done. Phase 0, quiescence. There must be some reason why, and you know the reasons really, okay? Definitely some hormones are suppressing and they're controlling it. Logically speaking, our knowledge, our thinking says that it must be progesterone, the leader, okay? Along with the friends also, there are some other friends also, okay? So let us see. Progesterone is number 1, top of the list, the leader is progesterone. Locally, there are some friends majood, prostacyclin, isn't it? That is also there. Plus, there are some other hormones of the placenta. Relaxin is also causing inhibition, some inhibitory hormones. Locally, there is another special chemical produced called nitric oxide, which relaxes the smooth muscles. That is also produced locally, okay? Parathyroid hormone related factor or a peptide is also a special peptide which is found in pregnancy, and that is also a smooth muscle inhibitor, okay? Some CRH and human placental lactogen, they also help in this process. So together as a group, okay, the main hormone is your definitely progesterone. The local worker mainly is your prostacyclin, but there are some other friends or contributors also in this process, okay? So they are having a very good dominance over the control, and they do not allow anything to take over till the major part of the pregnancy, okay? They will have a very good time, and they are governing the situation for more than 8 months. They will govern the situation. In the last month, definitely scenario will change. You know that, okay? This is the quiescence phase or the phase 0, where you have, I'll see what we can do later. Then in the activation phase, when activation phase comes, the situation is now changing. There is now a revolution coming. Estrogen is increasing, progesterone is decreasing. These effects are getting weak, and estrogen is becoming more strong. Activation is the time. So activation will happen, and these, number 1, yeah, okay, let us omit one thing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It will do. Yeah, it will be done.